Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Brendan Marshall, Kevin Wilds. Hey, KW, you want to run that back? Cam and the Patriots again next year?
Well, yes. Well, not literally run it. I would like to see more throwing, but if we have to run it back, sure.
Oh, you'll throw it back. Well said. Well played. But we got to start this morning in Seattle, where the seed was planted earlier in the week. Russell Wilson isn't happy. He could want out. Man of the Year, Russell Wilson. Seahawk for life, Russell Wilson. Now, anybody's guess, Russell Wilson. It's reported yesterday Seattle's gotten a bunch of calls from a number of teams, but the Seahawks reportedly not interested. So, Brandon, let's kick off this conversation like this. What is more likely week 1 next season? Russ is a Seahawk or Russ is playing for another team?
Yeah. Jenna, I think this is the player in me. I don't want to get caught up in what ifs because this is truly guys' livelihoods on the line. You talk about Dwayne Brown, the left tackle. You talk about Bobby Wagner. You talk about even Pete Carroll. So to get in the what-if game, I think it's irresponsible. Look, if Russell Wilson is on that roster come week 1, then that means Pete Carroll went to Russell Wilson, sat down, and they had a conversation. They compromised around 2 things. Number 1, offense. And I think they're close to being on the same page there. I think I know Russ was a part of that process when it came to finding that offensive coordinator. So they're good there. The other part of the conversation is around what are you going to do in the draft? What are you going to do in free agency? How are we going to go from only spending, $22 million, $23 million on our offensive line to $52 million on our offensive line when you talk about where the great teams spend money, the Las Vegas Raiders and the New Orleans Saints. I think that's what happens if he's on that roster. You got to look at it and you got to say, look, our right guard, who is he? Our right tackle, who is he? Not, oh, we have a plan. And if plan A falls through, what is plan B? Those are the conversations that they need to have so they can get back on track. They can get back on the same page and get back to balling. Like, I would love to see Russell Wilson there. I think we all would love to see Russell Wilson stay in Seattle, Nick. But they got to sit down. They got to have the conversation around those 2 things, the philosophy and then also the personnel.
I believe Russ is more likely to be playing for Seattle, but I cannot believe this is where we are so quickly. Wilds, this feels like, last week you get a call from your accountant. He's like, hey, just want to put it on your radar. I think we owe a little bit in back taxes. And then this morning, you get a call from your lawyer, and it's like the feds are asking when you want to surrender yourself. And it's like, wait, what happened? I thought everything was fine. Like, how are we now discussing, is it more likely he's not a Seahawk? Like, this really seemed to escalate awful quickly. And I do wonder when Brandon says they're going to have to reach a compromise, which side is more likely to give more than the other, because both sides do have a fair amount of leverage in that Seattle has the leverage of you got 3 more years on your contract, and Russ has the leverage of you've only known me as consummate pro Go Hawks Russell Wilson. I could introduce you to empowered, I don't want to say me first in a bad way, but worried more about myself than the team, Russell Wilson. That's a guy you might not like as much. So it's a very touchy situation.
Yeah, so if Seattle, Nick, is 100% committed to Russell Wilson, they have a funny way of showing it. Because I haven't seen one radio interview, one TV interview. I haven't even seen a clever meme. And this situation seems very easy to diffuse. You just get up there, you're Pete Carroll, you call into a radio station, you can come on this show. I know it's a little early on the West Coast. Come on in and say, listen, I know Russ is frustrated. We're all frustrated. This is the heart of a champion. But I promise you this, I will work tirelessly, just like the entire organization will, to make sure that Russell Wilson is holding another Lombardi trophy in a Seattle Seahawks uniform. And we'd be like, oh, hey, Pete Carroll, thanks for the interview. Looks like we're not going to be able to discuss Russ moving anymore because that's it. But, Brandon, because that hasn't happened, there's more fuel in the fire. And my favorite one, my favorite rumor / report is this one from Jason La Canfora. I thought this was a brilliant article and made total sense. Talking about Mark Davis. Mark Davis landed his dream coach. His franchise is poised to be the crown jewel of the league, tapping into its rich history, worthy of hosting Super Bowls, NCAA title games, maybe World Cup. But Davis has yet to make a truly iconic move with his roster, a signature acquisition to tie all of this together. Wilson could most definitely be that guy. I was like, woo! And I know you don't want to go down too far down speculation lane, but that one makes a lot of sense to me, Brandon.
There's only maybe 2 to 3 scenarios that really make sense. The Saints make a lot of sense, but the Saints are $100 million over the cap, around there, something like that. Resident GM, you can help me out there. And then you got the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are probably willing to do whatever they can and whatever it takes to get Russell Wilson in Chicago, in the Windy City. And then this is a great situation for him. You look at Henry Ruggs, you're looking at Nelson Aguilar, who got his career back on track, Josh Jacobs. You also have Darren Waller, and they spent around $50 million on that offensive line. That was a big thing that came out. What started all this stuff again, Jason LaCanfora coming out saying he needs to be protected. He wants to be protected. So they have the offensive line there. They made the investment there. Defensively, Nick, they're struggling a little bit there. But I want to throw this to you, Nick. But I want to end with this. Pete Carroll, there's no reason to force this if you don't believe in Russell Wilson. Because if you're saying that you want to play good defense, you want to run the ball, and you just want a quarterback that can throw it here and there, and you can build it off the play action, isn't that Baker Mayfield? That's Baker Mayfield. So I just think that all of this is interesting, and both sides could potentially get what they want. I don't think Pete Carroll's philosophy, he needs a all-time quarterback.
Well, it's very interesting you say that. And I think it might be best if we put all 4 of us on the screen here, because I have a confession to make to my colleagues, and then I have something that I need to debut. The confession is this. If I've seemed a little distracted, a little off my game this week, it is not because I have been filling in on the hurt. It's because I have been offered, potentially, the chance to interview for another job. And I can't say what it is, who it is, but it's in a front office of a team. And in preparation for that job interview, I have created what I consider my masterpiece. Brandon, I'm going to run this by you. This is a 4-team NFL super trade. And you tell me who says no. The Seattle Seahawks get Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Bosa, the 23rd pick of the draft from the Jets, and the Niners' #1 pick. The San Francisco 49ers get Deshaun Watson. The Houston Texans get the 2nd pick, the 12th pick, the 34th pick. The Jets' #1 next year, and Sam Darnold. And the New York Football Jets get Russell Wilson.
This is great.
So in that scenario, Sierra gets to live in New York. Brandon's going to have to do a little sales job on the Jets to Russ, but I think he can do it. The Texans get the 2nd pick of the draft, 3 other first-rounders. Pete Carroll gets that play-action quarterback, a defensive stud. San Francisco gets Deshaun Watson. Who says no, Brandon Marshall? 4-team super trade.
Brilliant.
Who says no, my friend?
I hate really good.
I hate to say this. But I don't think Russ is going to the Jets. I don't think he's going to the Jets.
They got Mekhi Becton.
I think Russ says no.
Becton. They got a bunch of money. It's New York City.
Got you, Brandon.
It's time to take a sacrifice for her. You got to sell him on it.
Jets.
You got to sell him on it.
When there was a lot of talk about Deshaun going to the Jets, I got excited. But we got to do a little bit more on the recruiting side, Jenna.